As a new brand, Realme took an unusual step by launching almost 6 phones in less than a year. That said, one of the most popular ones in them was the Realme 2 Pro, which was also the flagship phone for Realme. This was the device that was well received by almost everyone due to the powerful processor, the amazing display, and the good user experience. But today, with better specs, better design, and an all-new camera at the back, we have the successor, which is the Realme 3 Pro. So hey there, Sreehari from Mr. Phone, and let's jump right into the full review of the Realme 3 Pro. Before we jump into the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon right next to it, because we have a lot of new cool videos coming up on the channel, so you don't want to miss that. The Realme 3 Pro comes from just 1 year of design maturity, and I have to say that it looks good for that. I have to be honest, when I saw the Realme 3 with the unibody glossy plastic design, I was a little worried, because when you have a phone that's unibody and has a glossy design, it becomes difficult for people to hold. Now the Realme 2 Pro had a two-tone design with matte sides and a glossy back. The Realme 3 Pro is a much more refined version of the 2 Pro. The back is glossy and the material seems to be of higher quality. It's also curved at the sides that merge seamlessly with the matte textured frame of the device. The sides are not flat either this time. There are ergonomic chamfers all around the frame, which join together to form the flat surfaces at both the top and the bottom of the phone. I remember seeing similar frames and similar curves in the OnePlus 5T, and I was a big fan of that, and I'm really glad that Realme has done that in this. It really helps with the ergonomics of the phone. This is a tall phone for sure. For the people who might have a confusion, the back pattern is on the inside of the phone, is under a plastic surface, and does not play a part whatsoever in enhancing the grip of the phone. The placement of all the buttons, the SIM tray, microphones, everything is exactly the same. It's just the bottom part where the headphone jack and the single speaker grill have switched places, but that's it. Now, is that a bad thing? I don't feel so, because I had no problems with these placements anyway, and as they say, don't fix anything unless it's broken. Now, talking about the headphone jack and the speaker grill, the performance of both these is quite standard. It was similar with the Realme 2 Pro as well. There's nothing that stands out. The speaker grill is still at a position where you can block it easily when you're playing a game, and that happened with me a lot of times. But for the most part, at this price, I think the performance is quite standard. Now, another thing a lot of people want to know is about the call quality, and I'm happy to say that this thing hasn't changed from the Realme 2 Pro, and that's perfectly fine, because the Realme 2 Pro also had a really good earpiece. The call quality was good. I had no problems with it, and the Realme 3 Pro is exactly like that. It's actually the same speaker grills, it's the same size, so you have no loss in the voice whatsoever. Also, it supports dual VoLTE. It has a triple SIM slot where you can have 2 SIMs and a separate micro SD card slot. The fingerprint scanner on the Realme 3 Pro sits at the back, and it's quite standard and fast, but I have not been able to use it a lot because there is also face unlock on this, and the face unlock works pretty quickly. Because the face unlock is there and it's fast, I rarely use the fingerprint scanner, but when I do need to use it, it's quite reliable. Now, the Realme 2 Pro had a near 6-inch Full HD Plus display with a water drop notch, and the Realme 3 Pro has almost the same display. It's actually the exact same size. You can see here in this B-roll footage where we compare both these phones, and it is exactly the same dimensions. That's it. That's not a bad thing. I had fun with the Realme 2 Pro, and as far as the size of the display is concerned, I think the Realme 2 Pro was quite in a sweet spot where it was big but was not wide, so that I could handle it really well in my hand. Obviously the exact same dimensions, but that doesn't mean that it's the exact same panel, because this display is so much better than the Realme 2 Pro. It is so much more color accurate, and you can see that quite clearly here. I am amazed at how just tuning the display better helps it make look so much more premium. The display is truly better in every way, not just better than the Realme 2 Pro's display. This panel beats even the Redmi Note 7 Pro according to us. Some could argue that it's neck to neck with the Samsung Galaxy A50's panel. It's of course the Super AMOLED panel that the Samsung Galaxy A50 has. It's difficult to beat that with an LCD display, but I am pretty sure that the Realme 3 Pro's display is probably among the best LCD displays in the under 20,000 category. That also means that the display quality is really good, which means that there are no color shifts. Now that is one thing that AMOLED panels have, where you can see a greenish bluish color shift when you turn the phone a little like this, but that doesn't happen on the Realme 3 Pro, and the display shows no signs of color shift. There is also no color bleed on this, and that is something that LCD panels do tend to possess, but that is something that I did not find on the Realme 3 Pro. Talking about color accuracy, this thing is very close to real actual white, and how we found that is that we use MacBooks for our camera comparisons, because those are color calibrated displays, and right next to my MacBook's display, my MacBook's white and the white on the Realme 3 Pro are quite similar. Now the display being good looking is very good for consuming content when you're on the go. You also get Widevine L1 certification. That is something that Realme promises. This is a pre-production unit, and that is why this one does not have Widevine L1 certification as of now, but Realme has contacted us and told us that this being a pre-production unit, they did not get time to get this L1 certified, but all the boxes that go to retail, anything that you buy, all the Realme 3 Pros will come out of the box with a Widevine L1 certification. In a nutshell, the Realme 3 Pro's display is really good and probably among the best features on this phone, and makes the Realme 3 Pro a force to be reckoned with. The Realme 3 Pro runs ColorOS 6 built on top of Android 9 Pie. Now ColorOS 6 and Android 9 Pie is something we talked about in detail in the Realme 3 review. It was an exhausting section in the Realme 3 review, so if you want to know each and every detail, go and watch that one. But I'm actually going to take the Air route for this one. I'm going to tell you what I like and what I don't like. I like the fact that there is an app drawer. When I was introduced to phones, Android was already being used by people, and that is the way I learned what the default smartphone experience is like. Now, even after a decade of mature software experiences and improved software, it still is the basic philosophy. That's how almost all Android phones work. Now, what happens with skins like ColorOS in the past or Vivo's FunTouchOS, what happens is that when you have all the apps on the home screen, it's something that we are not accustomed to, and that is something that a lot of people don't like. Change is something that a lot of people don't like, and that is what I personally feel as well. But with the Realme 3 Pro and ColorOS 6, you actually have the option for an app drawer, which brings it closer to the stock Android experience, slightly closer, and probably goes back on the steps that ColorOS once was. I also love the single swipe universal search, a feature I wish almost every phone had. It's certainly a borrowed one, but it's been implemented well, and at the end of the day, it makes my life easier. I also love the camera app. It's part of another section, I know, but the fact that they worked on the camera app, all the general settings that you need are at your disposal, and it just becomes a much simpler experience. I also like certain features like the short press of the power key to call the Google Assistant, the security features which include things like payment portal protections, pseudo base station blocking, for example, which is something that makes sure that you don't receive fraudulent messages or scam messages that are generally not sent by your towers or your service providers, but from people who actually set up stations that mimic an actual tower. It also comes with secure keyboards, which lets you put in your password without recording anything, because all the keyboards that we use today, things like Gboard, things like SwiftKey, all have servers that take all the information so that they can give us suggestions and everything, which also includes the passwords that we put in. Now that is something that Oppo has actually used, and Realme also has a secure keyboard which is not connected to the internet, which does not have a database, which means that it will not store anything that you put in, hence actually helping you keep your private things private. Now coming to things that I don't like. I don't like the constant change of icons. I've not seen any reason for it. There has not been any pattern. I've always seen this happens with new Realme phones. Every time the default apps have a new icon, and that just doesn't help in any way. There's no theme that is followed. They just change randomly. That might be nitpicking to a lot of people, but it does help the entire user experience when you have a uniform theme going on with all your apps, your icons, your little setting icons, but that helps with the whole theme. For example, the fact that there's no design pattern functionality. For example, the Photos app has a squarish design, whereas the Clock app is round. The Phone app is round, but the Messaging app has its own shape. Then we go to the settings panel, the notifications panel, and all the toggles are in a squarish shape with rounded corners. This is something that does not show uniform design, and that is something that I think Realme can work on. I also don't like the notification panel. As I said, this thing needs a lot of work. It's certainly gotten better, but the whole UI just doesn't gel together. That said, all in all, the software experience on the Realme 3 Pro should not be a deal breaker. Now, for people who are really ardent stock Android fans, this might not be your cup of tea and you might just even hate using it. But for people who don't have a special preference, this is a very mature OS and has a lot of really good features hidden inside. So I'm pretty sure you're not going to have a problem using this. Now we come to performance, and the Realme 3 Pro comes with a Snapdragon 710 SoC. Snapdragon 710 is a name that excites a lot of people and might be one of the biggest reasons that people come and buy this phone. There are a lot of questions roaming around, so let's get to them one by one. First, we start off with benchmarks. Now, benchmark scores for the Realme 3 Pro with the Snapdragon 710 are not mind-blowing. That is something that I'll tell you right away. This uses the Cryo 360 architecture, the Cryo 360 core, and when compared to the Snapdragon 675, which is the closest competitor and also sits inside the phone, which is again the closest competitor, which is the Redmi Note 7 Pro, the CPU performance might be slightly better on the Snapdragon 675 because that has the newer Cryo 460 core. This has the Cryo 360 core. Now, when it comes to Antutu and Geekbench scores, you can see how clearly that the Redmi Note 7 Pro is ahead. When it comes to the GPU score, the Snapdragon 710 actually has a better graphics processing unit than the other processors, which is why the 3D Mark score is slightly higher than the other phones. That said, I had a chance to sit down with Qualcomm executives and I had a chat with them, and I actually asked a question where I wanted to know how they would compare the Snapdragon 710 to the Snapdragon 675, and what their answer was is that the Snapdragon 675 might have a better core when it comes to CPU performance and might be slightly better in benchmarks, but the Snapdragon 710 is a much more premium chipset. That is primarily because Snapdragon 710 has a lot of things borrowed from the Snapdragon 845, which is a flagship processor. So when it comes to the graphics processing unit, when it comes to the ISP or the DSP, which is the digital signal processing unit, which helps in camera performance, which helps in imaging and post-processing, or when it comes to things like the modem, which helps in better connectivity and things like cache, I think the Realme 3 Pro, and as they said, the Snapdragon 710 is a better processor than the Snapdragon 675. Now, we're not going to leave you out to dry and leave you guessing. So what we've done at Mr. Phone is that we've put out a video that is a performance comparison of the Realme 3 Pro with the Samsung Galaxy A50 and the Redmi Note 7 Pro. It's a detailed video that has gaming performance, benchmarks, and also battery tests. Go and watch that video so that you get to know where exactly the Realme 3 Pro stands among the competition. Now, actually coming to real world performance, I played PUBG on it and it was really fun. It defaults on high graphics, which is amazing for a phone under 20,000, and I was even able to play at 60 FPS quite well. There is very little stutter and the whole experience is quite fun. Even when it comes to day-to-day usage, the Realme 3 Pro seems really snappy. And also another thing that we notice is that the Redmi Note 7 Pro that we have right now is slightly becoming laggy. Now, what we notice is that Realme phones actually stay snappy for longer. We were using the Realme 2 Pro just recently, testing it out, and it was still as snappy as it was out of the box. And I'm expecting that the Snapdragon 710 will keep the Realme 3 Pro running the same as well. Another cool thing when it comes to gamers out there is that with the Realme 3 Pro and the Snapdragon 710 inside, you can actually now play Fortnite on the Realme 3 Pro. This is a service that was not available on a lot of phones. You couldn't play Fortnite on every phone. Samsung actually launched the Samsung phones with the Note 9 and a few other Samsung phones where you could play Fortnite, but you can do that now with the Realme 3 Pro. So under 20,000, that makes the Realme 3 Pro as of yet the first and only phone to play Fortnite. So that is something that is a big plus for a lot of people. The Realme 3 Pro actually comes in 4 and 6 GB RAM options and comes with 64 and 128 GB versions, but there is one thing that we have to note here. When the Realme 2 Pro came out, Realme made a lot of noise about using UFS 2.1 storage with the Realme 2 Pro's 128 GB version, which we found only in flagships before that. the Realme 3 Pro has actually gone back on that, and this one uses eMMC 5.1 storage. Now that is something that is a little disappointing. With the Realme 2 Pro, they made a lot of noise about using UFS 2.1 storage, and I was really glad that actually manufacturers were putting focus and money on things that were not necessarily marketable but would increase and improve the performance of the phone considerably. Now how that affects the performance is that the Realme 2 Pro, while had a read speed of about 450 megabytes per second, the Realme 3 Pro only has read speeds of around 290 megabytes per second. That is quite a difference, and that is purely because it's using an eMMC 5.1 storage. Now this is something that you won't notice because also the Realme 3 Pro has a much more powerful processor, but this is something that I thought I should put out. Now we come to the cameras, and cameras were one of the most popular things on the Realme 2 Pro. Now the Realme 3 Pro has increased the camera performance, it has better sensors. So the standard sensor on the Realme 3 Pro has gone to an IMX519, which is also apparently the same sensor that the OnePlus 60 uses in its standard sensor. The secondary sensor is a 5 megapixel depth sensor, which will help in better bokeh and better edge detection. The front camera is a 25 megapixel sensor again. Now this is all nerd talk. What about the actual pictures? I actually took a trip to Mandi, which is in Himachal Pradesh, and I had the chance to take a few amazing pictures using the Realme 3 Pro. I had this phone with me and I took a lot of pictures and a lot of videos. Now looking at these pictures, but the one thing that I found is that the Realme 3 Pro is a really capable camera. The colors that come out of this phone, the details, everything is phenomenal. Now there were a few hiccups though. When you look at the non-HDR shot, you can see how well the details have come out in the Realme 3 Pro's image. But when you turn HDR on, you can see how the HDR shot actually loses a lot of details to the point that it looks like the image has been compressed down. This is something that happened with a few images that I took while I was there. And what I feel right now is that it might also be a software bug, because I just finished a camera comparison with the Redmi Note 7 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy A50 of the Realme 3 Pro, and this did not happen there. So probably it was a software bug. As soon as I came back, I actually got an update on the Realme 3 Pro, and post that the camera performance has been much more better. That said, when the phone does get the images right, the colors are phenomenal. The exposure handling especially, this is something that the Realme 2 Pro struggled with really. Exposure issues were big on the front and the back camera, and this was a big feedback from the people and the reviewers as well. The exposure control on the Realme 3 Pro is simply phenomenal. Here is a shot where I actually open a door in a dark room and go to a bright scenery, and you can see how the exposure handling is really genius. It's been handled with grace, and I think the capabilities of the cameras on this phone are phenomenal, but I think Realme needs to do tuning to it, and I hope that when it comes out in the hands of consumers, the camera performance is better and stable. Going to video also, the Realme 3 Pro was as impressive. It also shoots 4K footage, but that is not stabilized sadly. 1080p footage is stabilized, and as you can see, the 1080p footage is really good. The microphone on this is good as well, and you can hear that in this recording.
What the footage looks like, this is full HD footage, so you can see there might be stabilization on this footage. What I can see right now is that the colors is a little saturated. Let's see what that looks like on my laptop. That's a color calibrated display, but this is what we can see. Now another thing that I've been seeing since the Realme U1 especially is that Realme has gotten very good at selfies. The Realme U1 had a phenomenal selfie camera. The Realme 3 also has a really good camera, and the Realme 3 Pro is again phenomenal. I think the details on the face, the color tones, the exposure control, all of this on the front camera is really good. And I think if I had to score the back camera and the front camera, I think I'd score the front camera better than the back camera. It's still a capable camera at the back, but I'm in love with the front camera of the Realme 3 Pro. Now apart from the standard features that we find in a lot of phones, this one has nightscape, which is night mode, and here is a picture that we took without night mode and with night mode. Now apart from the standard slow motion video, Realme 3 Pro also has 960 FPS slow motion video. Now this one again does not have 960 FPS in this device because it's a pre-production unit,
Realme has again promised that they'll put that in the units that go in your hands and in all the retail units. Now, even if I've done a camera section in the review, it still doesn't feel complete because we can't know how good a camera is unless we compare it to its competitors, and that is what we've done at Mr. Phone. We have actually put up a camera comparison, a detailed camera comparison between the Realme 3 Pro, the Redmi Note 7 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy A50. Again, a card linked for that here. Go and find that video, watch that video. There are two videos that you have to watch. One of them is the camera comparison, another is the performance comparison, again with the Redmi Note 7 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy A50. So please don't forget to watch both those videos. Realme has a history of weird numbers on the battery measure, and this one again is a 4045 mAh battery. It's about 4000 mAh, so it's slightly above average. For this size, for the LCD display, for the full HD plus resolution, I think 4000 mAh is really good, and that is what I actually experienced in my usage when I was in Himachal on my trip. I did not have to charge the phone a lot. It did hold charge for a long time. With me taking a lot of pictures and a lot of videos, the phone still held a lot of charge. I sadly cannot get battery screen on time on this, but the screen on time, from what I can say, if I have to guess, the screen on time will easily be anywhere from 5 to 6 hours. That is what the Realme 3 Pro's battery looks like. But there is one other thing that I can say with conviction makes the Realme 3 Pro one of the most desirable phones under 20,000, and that is the VOOC fast charging. Oppo developed the VOOC fast charging a long time ago, and that is the success on which OnePlus is actually riding as of now. Dash Charge is a version of VOOC Charge. You can actually see that the chargers and the adapters look very similar. Dash Charge was one of the biggest reasons that OnePlus phone sold, and that was one of the biggest talking points when it came to talk about the OnePlus phone, and that is also here on the Realme 3 Pro, and it's probably one of my favorite features on the Realme 3 Pro. Charging this up is so quick. Realme actually claimed that it goes from 0 to 100 in 80 minutes, but that is when the phone is not on, and that is actually something I found consistently. Now, when the screen is on, what I consistently found is that the phone got from 0 to 100 within 1 hour 30 minutes and 1 hour 40 minutes. This was the most that the phone took to go from 0 to 100, and it's actually a trip to see how fast a phone can charge when it's priced under 20,000. The one thing that a lot of people might be sad about is that it doesn't have USB Type-C, and it still only has micro USB, and that is a point of contention for me as well. Phones have become much modern today. Having to carry different cables today is not something I want to do. I still have to do that for the Realme 3 Pro. It is such a modern phone with a lot of good features, and I think USB-C was something that should have been here. It's sadly not here, but I think the fact that you get a VOOC charger in the box is something that helps you forgive the fact that there's no USB-C. Now we finally come to the conclusion of the video, and before concluding, we have to see what the competitors are like. So for the Realme 3 Pro, we still don't know the official price as of yet, so I'm going to go with a guess that I have in mind. It's going to be anywhere between 13,000 and 16,000, and in that price range, the main competitor is the Redmi Note 7 Pro. Now, comparing to the Redmi Note 7 Pro, if we go to design, the Redmi Note 7 Pro actually has a glass body. Now, that is the biggest difference because the Realme 3 Pro also looks good at the back. It comes in various colors. The Realme 3 Pro actually comes in 3 colors. My favorite one is the graphite one, and I sadly did not take it because this one looks much better on camera. There is this blue, and there is also another one that is a gradient of black and blue and purple. It's almost like the Starry Night edition that we saw with the Realme 3. With the Redmi Note 7 Pro, again, you get colors. So when it comes to design, I think both of them have their advantages. When it comes to display, I think the Realme 3 Pro has a much better display compared to the Redmi Note 7 Pro. Performance, Snapdragon 675 versus 710. Snapdragon 675 has a better CPU performance any day, but the Snapdragon 710 is a much more modern processor and has lineage from the Snapdragon 845, which brings much more quality components like the DSP, the ISP, and you get better connectivity with a better modem, and you also get better GPU performance. Then we go to the battery life, and in battery, even though the Redmi Note 7 Pro is really good and you get slightly faster 15-watt charging, that doesn't come in the box, but you get that, you can't beat the Realme 3 Pro with the VOOC charging and 1 hour and 30 minutes of fast charge. Now, when it comes to the camera, the Redmi Note 7 Pro still has a slightly better back camera, but that is according to our standards. Please make sure that you know what your preferences are. If you like slightly more saturated pictures, then the Realme 3 Pro is a better choice because it is already saturated out of the box, and you also get a chroma boost which makes the picture look more lively. Also, when it comes to the front camera, you cannot beat the Realme 3 Pro. The Redmi Note 7 Pro already did not have a great front camera performance, and the Realme 3 Pro is super amazing when it comes to the front camera performance. Now, the biggest difference among both these phones is the software, and that is a tricky one because the Redmi Note 7 Pro might have a slightly more uniform, more mature software, but is again riddled with ads, which means that the experience is broken down. You can't have a good user experience. It's not a premium experience. Whereas in the Realme 3 Pro, you don't have ads. Realme is quite proud about it and marketing very well about the fact that they don't have ads, because that is something you need to do today. But the software experience, even though I might like MIUI slightly more, the ad experience on it ruins it for me, and I prefer the Realme 3 Pro's Color OS compared to the MIUI with ads, of course. The Realme 3 Pro is a premium device for under 20,000, and if someone would have to ask me between the Redmi Note 7 Pro and the Realme 3 Pro, I would recommend the Realme 3 Pro. And with that, we come to an end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you thought of this in the comment section below. Please let me know if I covered all the details possible about the Realme 3 Pro. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. This is Sreehari from Mr. Phone, and I'll catch you in the next one.